It is the latest chapter in the legal saga that's left a Trumbull County mother fighting for justice more than 30 years after her son's death. Danny Lee Hill was convicted of torturing and killing 12-year-old Raymond Fife in Warren back in 1985. The 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled this year that executing Hill would be unconstitutional because he is intellectually disabled. But now that same panel of judges heard oral arguments on the case again last week at the request of the Ohio Attorney General. So joining us to weigh in on where this case could go from here, our legal expert and author of The Executioner's Toll 2010, Attorney Matt Mangino. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. I wanted to know what you thought about this case. This was a rehearing, something that the Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost requested. The state appealed the 3-judge panel's ruling that it would be unconstitutional to give Hill the death penalty. The 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals based their decision off of a 2002 Supreme Court ruling, which was actually long decided after Hill was sentenced. So can you explain, in terms of where this goes in a courtroom, why this case has legal grounds to be challenged?
Well, because of a Supreme Court decision in 2002, Adkins versus Virginia, in which the Supreme Court said that you cannot execute an intellectually disabled person. And as a result of that, people who've been sentenced, as in this case, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, can still challenge their death sentence based on the decision in Adkins versus Virginia. So that's, this is obviously a convoluted case. It's gone through the state courts. It's gone through the federal courts on more than one occasion. But ultimately, this is the path that these cases have taken since 2002.
And, you say it has had many twists and turns throughout the legal system. How important do you think it is that the courts review this and get it right this time?
Well, what happened in this case is that the 6th Circuit, in a panel of 3 attorneys, found that Danny Lee Hill was intellectually disabled and therefore was not eligible for the death penalty. What was just argued was an en banc argument before the 6th Circuit. And that's where all the 6th Circuit judges actually hear this case and will ultimately all make a decision. Ultimately, this case, I think, is going to end up back with the United States Supreme Court to make a decision. Because what happened when Adkins versus Virginia was decided was that the Supreme Court said you cannot execute the intellectually disabled, but it didn't define what intellectually disabled means. And so it left it up to the states to decide what an intellectual disability was. So you could have a decision in Ohio based on intellectual disability, which is different than a decision in Pennsylvania. And so cases have gone back to the Supreme Court to try to define, what intellectual disability means. What the court then said was, here's what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean just somebody's IQ. And that's the decision that's being, that the 6th Circuit is deciding with regard to Danny Lee Hill. His IQ is below 70, but does that itself alone mean that he's intellectually disabled? And that's what the courts are going to have to determine.
Absolutely. It comes down to the nitty gritty. I know a lot of taxpayers watching this saying, geez, this is costing a lot of time at the state's level, a lot of money. After this, does Hill have any other legal avenues that he could exhaust to fight a ruling if it is determined that they need to override their prior ruling and uphold the death penalty? Let's say this does go in the state's favor.
Well, he could ask for review by the United States Supreme Court. And so you don't have an automatic right to appeal to the United States Supreme Court. You have to ask the court's permission, and then the court will review whether or not they even want to hear the case. And if they decide to hear the case, then you can argue it in front of the United States Supreme Court. So that's not something that's available to him automatically, but it's, I'm sure, something that his attorneys will pursue if he gets an adverse decision by the en banc panel of the 6th Circuit.
Yeah, he's hoping the decision keeps him from going to death row. Let's say it is overturned. How long would it take before he would be scheduled to receive the death penalty in Ohio? Would that be a matter of months? Explain that timeline and how much time his attorneys have to then go in and say, we appeal this again.
Right. So that's a whole second set of challenges that would come, in the event that the court says that his execution could move forward. Then there would have to be a death warrant. He would be put, obviously there's other people on death row. There haven't been any executions, I don't believe, in Ohio this year. The number of executions are dramatically lower than they have been in the last 10 years in the state of Ohio. So the question is, yes, if they could impose the death penalty or carry it out with regard to Danny Lee Hill, when will that happen? Nobody knows. And there'll be, once a death warrant is signed, there'll be a whole series of additional challenges with the courts.
And throw into the mix, apparently President-elect Biden says he wants to end the death penalty. So we'll have to see if the federal level makes any changes.
Right. So President-elect Biden could stop the death penalty on the federal level. It would still be up to the states to determine, what they want to do on a state level. Certainly, he could recommend that he'd like states to move in the direction of abolishing the death penalty, but that's not going to happen necessarily on a state level, even with President-elect Biden's prompting.
Interesting. Now, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals could have a decision April or May is what we're hearing. Do you expect it to be that soon?
Well, I mean, this is obviously a complicated case because it's been through the legal system multiple times on a state and federal level. I think that the Sixth Circuit will move forward cautiously, make sure that they understand the full sort of dynamic of this case. It's not a simple one, so I don't anticipate that it will be a swift decision.
All right. Well, I know that Trumbull County prosecutor Dennis Watkins, who originally tried this and won the conviction and the death penalty, he has a lot of faith in Dan Flowers, who is the attorney solicitor for the Attorney General's office here in the state of Ohio. He says he has a brilliant legal mind. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I'm definitely interested. They called this a big show in Cincinnati this past week. So I wonder what will happen and what will come of it. But I really appreciate you bringing your insight here and breaking it down.
Well, thank you for having me.